There is a certain silence that follows heartbreak, not the kind filled with tears or noise, but a deep, almost sacred stillness. When a man hurts a good woman, the world seems to pause for a moment, as if watching to see what she will do next. She does not retaliate with rage, nor does she collapse beneath the weight of pain. Instead, something extraordinary begins to unfold, the quiet transformation of a soul learning its own worth. You see, when love is pure, and yet it's betrayed, the heart becomes both wounded and awakened. The good woman in her suffering begins to understand life from a place far beyond illusion. She realizes that the pain was not punishment, but initiation, a doorway into deeper self-knowing. What was once dependence turns into strength, and what was once longing transforms into clarity. When a man wounds such a woman, he unknowingly ignites her rebirth. She does not return the same. Her silence becomes her power, her distance becomes her wisdom, and her forgiveness becomes her freedom. In losing her, he loses far more than love. He loses the mirror that once reflected his highest self. When a good woman's heart is broken, it feels as though the very rhythm of her world has been disrupted. The person she once trusted becomes a stranger, and the warmth that once surrounded her turns cold. But beneath that emotional collapse, something silent and profound begins. She starts to see herself apart from the relationship, stripped of illusions. In that raw emptiness, she begins to listen, not to the echoes of what was lost, but to the faint voice of her own spirit, calling her home to herself. Heartbreak is not just a wound, it is an awakening, disguised as suffering. It dismantles the stories she once told herself about love, worth, and belonging. She begins to recognize how much of her identity she had woven into another person's validation. As she untangles herself from the threads of dependency, she realizes her strength was never gone, only hidden beneath layers of fear and expectation. The pain becomes her teacher, showing her that true love does not begin with another's approval, but with her own acceptance of who she is, even when no one stands beside her. In this transformation, she learns that pain is not her enemy. It is the sacred fire that purifies, burning away illusions and leaving only what is real. Each tear that falls becomes a baptism into deeper wisdom. She begins to understand that her value was never diminished by being hurt. It was revealed through endurance. Where she once saw weakness, she now finds resilience. The woman who once begged to be understood now walks in quiet confidence, no longer needing to be seen to feel whole. Through heartbreak, she learns the art of surrender, not to the one who hurt her, but to life itself. She no longer clings to what was meant to fall away. Instead, she flows with the current of change, trusting that what is lost was never truly hers. This surrender opens her heart not to bitterness, but to awareness. She starts to feel life more vividly, understanding that every experience, joy or pain, is an invitation to evolve. Her suffering refines her vision until she sees love not as possession, but as presence. As she rises from the ashes of her heartbreak, a quiet strength begins to radiate from within. She no longer seeks validation, for she has tasted the peace that comes from self-respect. Her words grow softer, but her energy grows stronger. She becomes unshakable, not because she feels no pain, but because she no longer fears it. What once shattered her now becomes her foundation. She walks with a grace born of survival, a reminder that broken things can still be beautiful when they choose to heal with intention. In the end, her transformation is not about becoming harder, but wiser. The pain that once seemed unbearable becomes the very force that reconnects her to her essence. She learns that real power is quiet. It doesn't demand. It simply exists. And in that stillness, she discovers her truth, that no one has the power to destroy her, for she carries her light within. What was once heartbreak becomes the heartbeat of her awakening, the rhythm of a woman reborn, whole and finally free. When a good woman chooses silence after being hurt, it is not because she has nothing to say. It is because she has finally realized that not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every battle deserves her energy. Her silence is not emptiness, it is protection. It is the quiet space where she gathers herself after chaos. In that stillness, she begins to understand that distance is not rejection. It is the sacred boundary between who she was and who she is becoming. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference, but for her, it is liberation. It is the art of letting go without bitterness, of walking away without hatred. When she steps back, she is not retreating out of defeat, she is creating room for clarity. She learns that she does not have to chase closure or force understanding. The truth reveals itself in silence. Her detachment becomes a spiritual discipline, teaching her to remain centered, even when emotions pull her in every direction. This is how she reclaims her power, not through confrontation, but through peace. In the quiet distance she creates, her mind begins to settle. What once felt like loss now begins to look like liberation. She starts seeing patterns that pain had once hidden from view. The endless cycle of giving too much, forgiving too soon, and expecting too little begins to dissolve. She realizes that her silence is not an act of suppression, but an act of self-preservation. By choosing not to react, she learns to respond from wisdom rather than from wound. This pause, this stillness, becomes the foundation of her awakening. Through detachment, she learns one of life's deepest truths, that love is not proven by holding on, but sometimes by letting go. She stops trying to control the story, understanding that what is meant for her will always return in a healthier form. In silence, she finds alignment with her own soul. She begins to trust the flow of life, accepting that endings are not always failures, but redirection. The distance she maintains is not isolation, it is recalibration. It allows her to remember that her peace matters more than being understood. As she grows comfortable in her quiet strength, the world begins to see her differently. The same silence that was once mistaken for weakness now radiates authority. Her calm presence unsettles those who once thrived on her emotional reactions. She no longer explains herself, for she has learned that truth doesn't need convincing. Her stillness speaks louder than words ever could. She is no longer trying to be heard, she is simply being. And in that being, she finds serenity, balance, and a deep sense of inner freedom that cannot be taken away. Ultimately, her detachment becomes her awakening. Through silence, she meets herself again, not as someone waiting for love, but as someone who has become love itself. She understands that peace is not the absence of noise, but the mastery of it. Her distance is not an escape, it is a return to clarity, to strength, to authenticity. And when she finally smiles again, it is not because she has forgotten the pain, but because she has outgrown it. She is solitary again. It is not because she has forgotten the pain, but because she has outgrown it. She is solitary again. It is not because she has forgotten the pain, but because she has outgrown it. She is solitary again. It is not because she has forgotten the pain, but because she has outgrown it. She is solitary again, but because she has outgrown it. What was once silence is now her song of freedom. Calm, steady, and eternal. When a man hurts a good woman, he is not merely breaking her heart. he is revealing the truth of his own soul. Every action he takes against her becomes a reflection of the chaos he carries within himself. His betrayal, his lies, or his indifference are not signs of her unworthiness, but of his own unresolved pain. The good woman, in her honesty and love, becomes a mirror he cannot face. What he rejects in her is often the very light he cannot bear to see within himself. A good woman's love has a way of exposing what is hidden. She loves deeply, purely, and without pretense, and that kind of love demands truth. When the man cannot meet her authenticity, he feels threatened by it. Her compassion reminds him of the tenderness he has lost, her strength reminds him of the integrity he has abandoned, and her patience highlights his restlessness. So instead of facing himself, he projects his insecurities onto her. He may blame her, silence her, or walk away, but in doing so, he only deepens the emptiness he was already running from. Her presence becomes a mirror too clear to ignore. When she stands before him, offering genuine affection, she reflects both his potential and his failures. If he cannot handle that reflection, he will try to shatter it. But he cannot destroy what she represents. Even as he distances himself, the truth follows him. The silence she leaves behind echoes louder than her words ever did. It reminds him of what he had, someone who saw beyond his flaws and still chose to love him. But once he breaks that trust, he also breaks the mirror that showed him who he could have been. With time, the illusion fades. The man who once felt powerful in his indifference begins to feel the weight of his choices. The thrill of freedom turns hollow when he realizes that no one else reflects him with such honesty. The woman he hurt becomes a ghost in his memory, not because she haunts him, but because her presence marked the last time he was truly seen. He begins to understand that what he lost was not just love, but the chance to confront and heal the parts of himself he long ignored. The mirror effect is merciless yet just. It teaches through absence what could not be understood through presence. While she moves forward, growing wiser and stronger, he is left behind with the echo of his own actions. The very love he once took for granted becomes the standard by which all others are measured, and none quite compare. In hurting her, he hurts himself, for the reflection she offered was his truest self waiting to emerge. But instead of embracing it, he turned away, choosing illusion over transformation. In the end, the man does not lose her simply because she walked away. He loses her because he failed to recognize her light as the reflection of his own. He may try to replace her, but no one can mirror the same depth of soul she did. She was both a lesson and a blessing, one he only understood in her absence. And while she rises into peace, he is left staring into the fragments of the mirror he shattered, realizing too late that in breaking her heart, he had only broken his own. When a good woman rises after being broken, she does not rise with rage in her eyes or vengeance in her heart. She rises with grace, the kind that comes only from surviving something that tried to destroy her spirit. At first, the pain feels unbearable, but as time moves gently forward, she begins to see the deeper purpose of her suffering. Every tear becomes a seed of wisdom, and every wound becomes a reminder of her strength. He understands that revenge is still a form of attachment, while forgiveness is the path to freedom. Forgiveness does not come easily to her. It is not a sudden decision, but a slow, sacred unfolding. She wrestles with anger, disappointment, and grief until she realizes that holding on to pain only binds her to the one who caused it. She begins to see that forgiveness is not for him, it is for her. It is the moment she decides to stop carrying what is no longer hers to bear. In letting go, she reclaims her energy, her peace, and her identity. Forgiveness becomes the gentle act of choosing herself over the memory of betrayal. As she learns to forgive, her perception of power changes. She no longer seeks to prove her worth through revenge or validation. She no longer desires to make him understand what he has done. Instead, she allows karma and time to handle what her words cannot. Her strength now lies in stillness, in the quiet assurance that what is meant for her will never need to be taken by force. This calm power radiates from her, not loud, not boastful, but steady, like sunlight that returns after the storm. In this rebirth, she rediscovers her softness without losing her strength. She loves again, but differently, not out of need, but from fullness. She sets boundaries, not out of fear, but from wisdom. Her heart, once shattered, now beats with a new rhythm, one that honors both her pain and her growth. She becomes the embodiment of balance, tender yet firm, open yet discerning. Her forgiveness transforms her into something rare, a woman who has faced darkness and chosen light anyway. That choice, repeated every day, becomes her quiet revolution. Through forgiveness, she becomes untouchable. The man who once wounded her can no longer reach her, not because she hates him, but because she has outgrown the version of herself that allowed him in. His name no longer stirs her emotions. His memory no longer steals her peace. She does not erase the past. She redeems it by turning it into wisdom. Her scars no longer represent loss. They represent lesson. She smiles, not because she forgets, but because she finally understands that everything happened to awaken her to her own divinity. In the end, her rise is not about triumphing over another, but about mastering herself. The woman who was once broken now walks as a living testament to resilience. Her power lies in her peace, her courage in her compassion. Forgiveness becomes her crown, invisible but radiant. It is proof that she has transcended pain and turned it into purpose. And as she moves forward, she carries no resentment, only gratitude for the lesson, for the awakening, and for the beautiful truth that no one can take away her freedom again. Every story of pain carries within it the seed of transformation, and the journey of a good woman who has been hurt is no exception. Through heartbreak, silence, reflection, and forgiveness, she evolves from being wounded to being awakened. The man's actions may have broken something within her, but in truth, they broke open the very door through which she would rediscover her own power. Her pain became her teacher, her silence, her sanctuary, her detachment, her wisdom, and her forgiveness, her final freedom. What began as loss turned into liberation. When she was hurt, she did not yet realize the divine purpose hidden in her suffering. She thought she was losing love, but she was being guided back to herself. In the darkness of heartbreak, she learned to see without illusions. She came to understand that love does not always mean holding on. Sometimes it means letting go. Through detachment, she discovered that peace is not found in control, but in release. The silence she once feared became her strength, a language through which her soul spoke louder than words ever could. In her stillness, the mirror of truth appeared. She began to see that the man's betrayal was not a reflection of her worth, but of his own unhealed pain. His actions revealed his inner confusion, his inability to face his own reflection. The woman he hurt had shown him love so pure that it exposed what he lacked. But instead of rising to meet that love, he ran from it. And in doing so, he lost far more than her presence. He lost the one person who held a mirror to his highest self. Yet, her loss was not eternal. From the ashes of heartbreak, she rose anew, wiser, softer, and infinitely stronger. Her rebirth did not come through vengeance, but through forgiveness. She understood that holding on to pain would only keep her chained to what broke her. So she chose to let go, not for him, but for her own peace. Forgiveness became her liberation, a quiet declaration that she would no longer be defined by wounds, but by wisdom. The woman who once cried in silence now walks in grace. Her strength is not loud, it is calm, steady, and rooted in peace. She no longer seeks to be understood, she understands herself, and that is enough. So when a man hurts a good woman, what follows is not her destruction, but her transformation. She becomes a force of quiet power, a reflection of the truth that love, once broken, can return purer and more selfless than before. Her story is not one of loss, but of awakening. It reminds us all that pain is not the end, it is the beginning of becoming whole again. Thank you for listening. May we learn from her strength, find peace in our own struggles, and remember that forgiveness is the highest form of freedom. God bless you all.